Well, hello, my name's Penny and I live in the southeast of England with my husband Pete, and I haven't seen you for a fortnight, so if you're one of my regular viewers, you know, hello, special hello. I went away for a few days and I had a lovely rest. It was only 4 nights, but sometimes, you know, that's nice because you don't have to take too much with you. We go on the train, so we don't want to carry heavy cases, and we're looked after there so well. We went out for the day and we went over Dartmoor and we saw a few things, and I'm going to make a film of those and I'll put those up, you know, over the coming weeks. I went with my daughter and son-in-law. You know, she'd had a big op at the beginning of August and she's fine. Yeah, still looking after herself as you have to, but she's fine. And we had a lovely laugh. We didn't stop talking. In fact, you know, we didn't draw breath for the first 2 days, but we quietened down and settled down for the next 2. So that was lovely. So that's what I've been up to, and the M film is a little bit about that. I'll tell you that when we get there. I walked round the garden. It's been a beautiful sunny day. And do you remember our glory tree? That smells like jasmine, and that's out for a good couple of months, and it's outside my kitchen. And oh, it's just lovely. It's heady, you know. But then we've got 1 piece of blossom, 2 pieces of blossom left, and now they're turning into red petals with like a blueberry in the middle. Absolutely stunning. Shall I show you my knitting? This is it. This is what I've been doing. I've been knitting the Spindrift Shawl. Helen Stewart. And it's just done with 100 grams, which is great if you've got one of those, you know, skeins of wool that you're not quite sure what to do with. And that's what this was. Here it is. Very simple. And I did play yarn chicken because I think I could have done another row of holes with what I had left. I really like it. Let me pop it on for you. Keeps your neck warm and it's just lovely. I'm really pleased with it. And this wool was from Ellie of Craft House Magic, blue for Penelope, baby alpaca, 70% baby alpaca, 20% silk and 10% cashmere. And it's absolutely, honestly, it's absolutely gorgeous. Gorgeous. So soft, so drapey. Just all the little different shades. So there we are. A plain one for a change. So that's what I've been knitting, and I thoroughly enjoyed doing that. And now I've been, as you know, if you usually join me, I'm making a bed runner, which I am going to film, and you know, at the end I will show you how I made it. But for now I'm just showing you the bits as I've made them. I decided to do it EPP. Let me show you. So EPP is English paper piecing, and that means that you pop your paper round, you pop your fabric round the paper and use that as your guide, and then you sew that middle bit in there like that. Do you see, you haven't got any seams to sew together, you're sewing the edges together, which is very different to patchwork. Very different, because usually you're sewing that seam together with that seam. And so when the whole thing is finished, I thought, how am I going to bind it? Because we usually bind quilts, you know, we put a binding along. Have I got one here? Yeah, here we are. On the seam, I've put a binding. But you see, I don't really want to put a binding around this neat edge because I'll be losing a lot of that. Well, I'll be losing however much that wide that seam, the binding is. So I've decided not to do that. At the minute, these are melons. We call them melons. And at the minute I'm making the melons, here's one made. You can see. Of course, you take these papers out. You don't have a quilt with papers in them. Easy to come out. I tack mine. I think if you're just doing a few little hexes and then you're going to sew it straight on, you can use, you know, the fabric glue that they make for doing EPP. But for me, that's no good because you need to manhandle this a bit, quite frankly, to get that to fit. And I wanted it sturdy, not coming undone. So I enjoy doing it anyway, because most of my crafting, well, all of my crafting really takes place around the fire in the winter or in the conservatory during the summer. Or sometimes I sit up here in my bedroom because it's lovely, the view's lovely. But yeah, it's I do hand sewing and knitting, and that just, I can do that anywhere. Anyway, what I've decided to do is to applique, and if you don't know what that applique is, it means applique is sewing that onto a fabric behind. So I'm going to sew that onto a fabric behind, and in this case I've chosen green, and I'm going to make that my bed runner. That makes sense? So I'm going to sew all that round there, leave a little gap, take the papers out and sew up the little bit left onto my bed runner. Can you see the centre there? It's a nice fabric. It's got little dots on it. And what I've decided to do is to get some fabric and do an edge of that fabric, and that will then I'll bind it in the green. And I'm making this for my granddaughter, and her bedroom is, you know, these colours, and she loves the William Morris, and I made her a quilt with the a William Morris quilt, and I had some leftovers. Of course, however much you just don't need a lot of fabric, you know, for these things. I've still got a whole bag full of leftovers. I think I could make another 4 of these, but I'm not going to. I shall do something else. But let me show you. It's called a double wedding ring. That's the pattern. And I've decided to do the wedding rings. Obviously, this is just a small piece of fabric to show you the colours. I've decided to applique the wedding rings along the fabric to make the bed runner. You'll see as I go along. I'll show you the first, bending down, sorry. I'll show you the first ring. Here's the first ring I've done. So you see I made the melons, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've taken the paper out of that one, so it looks like there's a little, but it's not. It's just because it's hard to press it with a paper either side. But that's all gone in nicely. And then you do the middle bit with a big piece of paper. That's what it looks like with the papers. Of course, they'll all come out. And that's my first ring. So at the minute, that's what I'm doing. I'm making these rings and putting the middle in to make the melon. Of course, for my next one, I will only need 3. 1, 2, 3, because this ring makes the 4th, and that's how we go along. That's my double wedding ring. So it's coming along, getting there. I'm not rushing it. You know, that's what I talked about last time, setting goals. If I make so many of that and so, just do it. As my little grandson says, do it, do it, do it, and do it at your own pace. So there we are, that's my waffle, and showing you what I've been knitting, what I've been quilting. And now I thought I'd just read you a story that Pete's written about his Auntie Rose, just to have a little quiet time together. And it's chapter 5, My Auntie Rose, 1905 to 1993. She was Mum's older sister by just 2 years, and as I was the baby of the family, I was dearly loved by her. She never married. Years later, we discovered a letter from a boyfriend tucked away amongst her things. We believe he was a casualty of the war, which perhaps explains why she stayed single. Rose wasn't what you'd call a pretty woman. Life had taken its toll. When her mother died, my nan, Ada, she went to live with her sister, my Auntie Ada. Later, when Auntie Ada married Alf, Rose was invited to live with them. By the time I knew her, she was living at 119 Bowes Road, tucked into a tiny room between the dining room and the bathroom. I never set foot inside, although I always wanted to. Every so often I'd catch a fleeting glimpse when the door was left ajar. She worked at the metal box factory just off the North Circular Road. There she lost her left thumb in a machine accident. As the story goes, she simply walked over to first aid and asked for a plaster, utterly unflustered. On her other hand, she was missing the top of her middle finger, thanks to a bit of wire wool that went untreated. That was Rose. No fuss, no bother. Every Saturday, without fail, winter or summer, come rain or shine, my Auntie Rose would come for tea. On arriving at the house, she'd call out, "Hello, Grace. I'll put the kettle on." Then she'd turn to me with a smile and say, "What have you been up to?" I never knew quite how to answer, but it didn't matter. She wasn't really expecting one. Once the tea was brewed, she'd take her seat on the hard-backed chair in the dining room, never the soft, inviting armchair, and reach into her handbag. Out came the sweets. "Don't eat them all at once," she'd say. Back into her handbag, this time producing a comic. When I was little, it was Sunny Stories by Enid Blyton. Later, it became The Eagle. Then out came the knitting. She, like Mum, was a great knitter. The two of them would sit there chatting away, Auntie Rose's needles clicking, Mum's silent, but both of them producing woolly garments for the family. I've a photo of them waiting for the Isle of Wight ferry, coats buttoned up against the cold, still knitting and chatting together. When we moved to Norfolk Avenue, I wondered if she'd still come. I didn't have to wait long. On the first Saturday, her familiar cry echoed through the house. "Hello, Grace. I'll put the kettle on." Even when we moved to Potter's Bar, she didn't miss a Saturday. It was no small journey, 20 minutes on foot to catch the bus, a 45-minute ride, and then another steep 20-minute walk uphill. Yet still, without fail, she arrived. As I grew older, the sweets and comics stopped. Instead, she'd offer me one of her players' weights. I usually declined unless I was really desperate. In return, I'd offer her one of my senior service, which she always accepted. By then, my house had become the gathering place for all my mates. On a Saturday evening, up to 20 of us might cram into the small back room, scooters and minivans lining the street outside. Poor Auntie Rose, trying to watch her favourite programme, Dixon of Dock Green. "He's a bit past it," someone would mutter. "Look at those plates." Plates of meat feet. Eventually she'd sigh, "When are you going out?" And we'd finally troop off. She'd shake her head and say to Mum and Dad, "Little beggars, I don't know how you put up with them." Her real passion, though, was photography. With her much-loved brownie box camera, she captured so many family moments. I'm grateful she did, because those black and white snapshots have become my treasures, my family history. Oh, that's another story Pete's written, and that's the end of the stories. So hopefully he'll get his skates on and write you another one for next time. So I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to pop on and say hello. So thanks for joining me. And, oh yes, the film. It starts at Exeter station, and I got thinking about it, you know, because the road is called Isambard Road, I think, or something like that. You'll see on the film. And I looked him up, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. It's a name and a half, isn't it? And I just thought, I wonder what he was like. He grew up in the early 1800s, and you could say he was born to engineering because his dad was Mark Isambard Brunel. He was a very clever French engineer who fled to England to escape the French Revolution. And young Isambard, well, what his dad got him to do, because he was homeschooled until he was 8, he got him to draw buildings and then say what was wrong with them. And so he looked at buildings completely differently to most people. You know, what was the structure of that? And why was it good or why was it bad? This is a little boy. And so he was sketching bridges and buildings, you know, before he could spell his own name. And by the time he was 8, he was really drawing some wonderful sketches, some wonderful engineering diagrams. He went to school in France, also in England as well, and he studied engineering properly at an age when really, you know, we were just doing ordinary sums, quite frankly, and you know me, I can't do ordinary sums anyway. So yeah, he was a very clever man, but he was only 5 foot tall. I loved that. And there, you know, there's pictures of him in a stovepipe hat, you know, those long ones, you know, like this. And so maybe he wore that, you know, just to make himself look taller. He had these big thoughts. And to get down to Exeter from London, you go on the Great Western Railway, and he built the railway. And it's just amazing to think that if it wasn't for him, you know, wow, it's just a wonderful, wonderful railway. And the Great Western, he wanted it so smooth that passengers could travel as comfortably as if they were sitting in their own drawing room. And that was his vision, to make travel elegant, not just practical. He built bridges, the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol, that's his most famous. And he also built ships. Honestly, I could go on and on. He was the most wonderful engineer. And he didn't worry if he failed. he just kept dreaming bigger and bigger, and if it failed, well, it didn't matter, but he changed the world around him. He really did. Imagine Britain without its sweeping railway lines, without our beautiful bridges. It just wouldn't be the same without Isambard Kingdom Brunel. He was named Isambard because that was his dad's middle name, and he was named Kingdom because that was his mum's maiden name. And so there we are. He was just a most wonderful man. And just Exeter Station was obviously built by him, and also the railway from London, how to get there, and the street is named after him, as I think many streets are in Britain, because that's, you know, he left his legacy. So that's my film, starting off at Exeter Station, and then Mark, he's just the most wonderful guide, but he's become a friend now, and it makes our little trips away so special. So he picks us up from Exeter Station and he takes us to our lovely hotel, Gidleigh, but en route this time he took us to a very high place in Exeter, near Exeter, not far. And oh my goodness, you could see the River Exe, and it goes out into the sea. You can see right the way to the Dorset coast. I mean, the view is just amazing. It really is. It's fabulous. His name is Experience Southwest Tours, and if any of you are living abroad and you want to come to England and you want to have a really fantastic trip, Mark's your man. And he's an independent small tour operator based in South Devon that covers Cornwall, but Devon mostly, and Somerset, but then he does go to the Cotswolds and the New Forest. So if that's where you're heading, you want to get in touch with him, I'll put a link below, www.esw-tours.com. I can't help but, you know, want to tell you about him. I'm not getting paid for it, obviously, but, oh, Pete's walking down the garden. That's nice. Yeah, there's a lot going outside my window today. Anyway, he's such a lovely guy. And then after taking us to this high place and letting us look around, he drove us to Gidleigh, which is all the Devon narrow lanes. A lot of you will know them, but maybe you don't. They're so small, you have to back up. Some people don't like driving them. We arrived at Gidleigh, and I'll just show you inside the hotel. And next week I'll show you one of our walks and a little bit more of outside. Yeah, so that's that. Lovely to see you again, and take care. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next week, hopefully. If you don't see me next week, you'll know I'm being busy or life's taken over. And I'll say, I'll see you when I see you. Take care. Bye-bye.